Hello, everybody, and welcome to another IG Live with Claire, Hope, and I. Today, we'll be speaking about self love. It's a topic that's very, very near and dear to both our hearts, and something which I believe is the foundation of everything that we do in the world, the way we move, the way we interact, the way we engage in relationships, even the way we engage at work and with our own creativity. So, today, we're going to be looking at a few various themes such as reparenting, boundaries, connecting to your inner voice, balancing the feminine and masculine energies, and a few other things as well. So Claire is going to join me online and then we're going to get going. Hello to everybody who's joining and tuning in. I'm really excited for this chat. For me, self-love is the base of my entire practice. It's what I really try to bring into all my coaching sessions. I think when someone has a solid base of self-love, from there it's really easy to move in the world with more ease and more flow. So let's get Claire joined in here. Hey Queen,
Hey Queen,
how you doing?
I'm good. I'm in La Jardine,
It's
the
beautiful.
garden.
Looks so lush.
Okay. It is, and it's so lush to just be in the garden with the birds and the neighbors playing guitar.
That's amazing.
It's a good day.
It's a really
Yeah,
good setting to talk about self-love.
totally.
Um, so let's drop in. Would you be keen to do just a quick little breath work with us and everyone who's joined?
Sure, I'd love to. Thanks for the invitation. Cool. So, everyone, I invite you to close your eyes and roll your shoulders back. Open up your heart and begin to relax your forehead as if it were melting, your eyes, your nose, your ears, your mouth, softening your tongue completely and allowing this melting sensation to drop down into your heart, allowing your heart to pour and melt open. And then allowing yourself to take in a deep, delicious breath, saying the words, I am sacred, as you breathe in. And then holding the breath there for a moment, allowing it to permeate your being. And then releasing the breath out, saying the affirmation, I am love. And then again, breathing in your own time, breathing in, I am sacred, allowing it to fill your being, allowing it to fill your body, and taking a moment to hold the breath and allowing it to permeate your being, and then letting the breath out with I am love. And then I invite you to do this 3 more times in your own time and silence, breathing in, I'm sacred, holding it there, and breathing out, I am love. And as you do these final 2 breaths in your own time, bring yourself truly into your body, into the melting sensation, into the medicine, into feeling your heart, into feeling this frequency of being sacred and being love from the inside out. what it is like to have this affirmation come from within and fill your whole being as your baseline and your starting point for arriving and being here. And feeling the sensation for another moment, just to really become familiar with it in yourself, knowing that this is the start and the end, and how we arrive. And then opening your eyes and coming back into the room when you're ready, giving yourself a big old hug, wrapping your arms around you, and then bringing your hand to your heart and giving your heart a nice rub. It's yummy.
Perfect. Thank you so much, my love. So I think a good way to jump in would be to talk about why self-love. Like, why is this such a hot topic? Why are there so many coaches and therapists and people like us, healers and teachers, talking about these things and it being so important? And I kind of want to speak to what you just did with us, which is you said, laying the foundation um, for the love to enter you and for ease and for flow. And just before you hopped on, I was talking about self-love really being a foundation for us to engage in the world. So I'm curious if you could speak a little bit about what self-love means to you.
Well, when I speak to self-love as being the baseline, I have a very deep connection with nature, just because I grew up in quite a volatile space where there was a lot of emotional neglect, and I found my refuge and my space of safety in nature with the animals and the plants. And nature is an amazing place for self-regulation to happen
Mm,
and for homeostasis kicking in the nervous system. So in my natural resonance with nature as a child, I learned naturally how to self-soothe and how to feel that space of respect and safety in myself. So also for me as a foundational thing, it's very important to for me to come back to that in myself, to be able to come back here, because there's a lot of blindsidedness or unintentional hurt that happens in the world. Simply people don't know what our boundaries are, or we don't even know what our boundaries are, and then we tend to blindly knock each other in the dark. And in that, it's very important for me to have a practice of self-love, just so that I can create that space of safety and respect, that sacred space of temple in myself, so that at least I can get up in the day and get out there and know what that resonance of love feels like within me. And I don't necessarily have to get it from someone else or have something happen in a certain way for me to happen, but to have it. But you know, naturally, if that love is able to flow through naturally through others to me and it's reciprocal, then it just amplifies and grows bigger. But as a first point, I need to have that reciprocal relationship happening within myself. So as you were saying, so that it can flow through, and it can flow through my heart, and I can be in a heart space just simply by being in resonance and being in harmony with my own baseline,
mm,
wherever I may find myself to be.
mm. I want to hop in there and kind of elaborate on that. I guess in terms of external thing, finding purpose and meaning in external things in the world around us. And I think that's very dangerous because we don't have control over those things. We don't have control over how our boss treats us at work on any given day. But if we have self-love, we're able to know, oh, this is crossing a boundary, or I need to communicate that this is not okay. Um, we don't have control over what happens in our country or what, bigger circumstances. But what we do have control over is how we engage with those circumstances and how we engage with ourselves and hold ourselves within those circumstances. And for me, speaking to what you're elaborating on in terms of relating and um, yeah, it makes me think such an obvious example, which I think for many people is the way that they discover the need for self-love is through a big breakup. That like aha moment where you realize you were so attached to someone because they were giving you the love that you haven't been giving yourself. And that it can take years, or maybe some people don't even get to that point in their lives. But it can also be a very quick process. For me, it's taken multiple relationships to get to the stage where I was like, what am I seeking in these people? And are these fair expectations of these partners? And realizing that a lot of what I actually needed from them was something I needed to cultivate within myself. Um, so being able to like seeking things like affirmation or validation in external states and external objects or places is is dangerous, as I said. So yeah, I love that. I love that definition and that sort of grounding of why we need self-love. Um, and then I guess I would like to then build on that a little bit more is what does self-love look like? You know, because for me, I remember, I've done a lot of self-work, and as I mentioned, I had these relationships which kind of helped me identify the fact that there were gaps in how I was treating myself. Um, and to be able to manifest a healthy relationship in my life, I realized I needed to change the relationship that I had with myself. And that being said, I still had a lot of places in my life where I wasn't giving myself love. And I really discovered this about a year and a half ago. I went on a journey to heal my eating disorder. And I thought I was like, oh, this is to do with control and discipline and like I just don't have enough control. And I realized through that process what I was lacking was real deep self-love. The kind that, you know, you're not only nourishing your physical needs, but you're also nourishing your spiritual, your emotional needs, all these different pillars of wellness that I have a holistic approach to them and a holistic self-love practice. And actually, you introduced that idea for me of uh, having a practice for yourself. I already had things that I did or like routines, but to have this word like self-love practice really helped me kind of group together all these concepts into a really powerful way of being in the world. Um, yeah, love to hear from you. Oh dear. Okay. Maybe the garden is. Well, in the meantime, um, I'll just. Oh, there we go. Okay. So self-love is also how to hold ourselves in unexpected moments, as I was saying. We never know what the external world is going to throw at us. So being able to hold ourselves with grace, with flow, with understanding, with self-compassion. So there's 5 themes that Claire and I want to look at in this chat. Um, the first one is reparenting. And this for me was also a really powerful tool. And I'm just going to add Claire back in. There you go. This for me was a really powerful tool in my life because in an ideal world, we are raised by conscious parents who are able to hold themselves, who are aware of emotions, and who have the ability to to hold themselves in difficult situations so that they can also hold their children. They know not to project their fears and their dreams and their judgments onto the child. Ideally, this is the ideal situation. But most of us, the reality is, most of us are born into unconscious households, and especially if we think, uh, 2 generations ago, even a generation ago, the discussions around mental health were very different. They were very taboo. In a lot of older generations, it still is something which they struggle to speak about openly. There you go. There's Claire. Uh, so reparenting is really about being the parent to yourself that you wish you had had. Hi, babe.
Hey.
I've been having such crazy internet issues today as
Oh,
well.
okay.
So
Uh,
I totally understand your the connection cutting out. I was just speaking about reparenting, and I
okay.
was talking about how it's about being the parent that you wish you had had. And this is not to discount our parents and what they've done for us, but to really go, okay, what did I wish I had had more? What do I wish I had had more of in my childhood? What could have nourished me more? Every person has different needs as a child, and I was talking about how most of us are not necessarily born into conscious households where a parent knows about not to project or how to hold themselves, hold their emotions. Um, so yeah, I'm curious to hear about your view on reparenting.
I love the concept of reparenting because, it really allows me to give myself what I need. So, and that takes a lot of work too, because it's kind of like you don't really know you don't have something until you've seen it out there, until you've seen the potential and the possibility of it. So, I didn't really grow up with many boundaries, and I didn't really grow up with having my needs heard in a way that it was celebrated. Like with parents, I think with parents they're holding so much, and sometimes they just need things to be simple for them and run the way that they needed to run. But in that process, as a child, your voice doesn't get heard, your needs aren't seen, and you tend to be walked over. And maybe even in high emotional situations, scolded or shouted at, or a lot of the time, parents too. What I've seen parents doing is they'll have an idea of what they would like to see their child become or not become, and then comments are thrown. You're going to grow up
Mm,
like your mom and be like this, or don't grow up like your dad and be like that. Like,
mm,
and they can be such simple things, but they have such a strong effect, especially at such a young developmental age. So the work that I've personally done with reparenting is really digging deep into myself to find who I am at my core and what it is that my inner child needs to hear. And maybe it's to say, well, no, actually, you were disrespected, and this is your voice in how you need to create the clear lines so that you are treated in a loving way and with kindness, and how you deserve to be treated and how you deserve to show up in the space. Or, wow, that was such a brave thing that you did. That was a real challenge. Or, of course, you can have that thing that you want. Go get it. You can do it. Go shine.
mm,
Simple things like that. And these are spaces where I feel reparenting is so important, because often it really takes a self love practice to first love yourself, to know the value of that, and then to create the parameters of safety around that to protect it and to reinforce it and to influence it and to make sure that you can go and get out there and be the best person that you can be and that you want to be, and that you have yourself behind you saying, I've got you, I back you, you're amazing, I love you, we can do this and we're doing this together. And I think
mm,
that's really important for reparenting, because a lot of the time wounded children are parents.
mm.
And that's not necessarily fair for children because a lot of children end up growing up in a household where they have to grow up very fast and that they end up being the parents in the household. But even that still, it's still a challenge to then go and find what your needs are in the space. Am I being codependent? Am I rescuing? Is this really my responsibility? How can I show up for myself right now? How can I get myself? Does this pattern serve me? Is this a toxic situation? Is it really to my benefit and to my health? What is the voice? What is the reparenting voice? What is the parent voice in me that what does that voice sound like? And what is it saying to me? How that is looking out for me in my best interest and not in a selfish or self-absorbed way, but just in a genuine, if I had a 3-year-old with me, how would I be taking care of them? And it's not to say that then either we need to be not getting out of our comfort zones, like, oh, let me protect this little 3-year-old child and mollycoddle them and make sure they never see the big bad world, but at the same time to not cross our own lines of how we need to feel loved and respected as a
Mm,
first port.
mm,
Because then we give permission and we give the status quo of how others get to treat us.
mm.
And I think that's my first mistake.
Yes. There's a quote which says something like, "How you treat yourself is how others will treat you," because you model that behavior to them. You know, if you have no boundaries with yourself or within your family or within your friend groups, that's going to spill into your work life because you're not used to you handle yourself or engage in certain ways, and people will respond to you accordingly. Um, I love this image of a young child and then your older self soothing that young child. Um, and it also makes me think about a conversation I had yesterday with a coaching client, and we were talking about a particular pattern that he has that keeps coming up in his life, in his relationships, and how he realized that was linked to an experience when he was younger, where he was laughed at or he wasn't taken seriously. And I was talking about how, as a child, you don't have the mental or emotional faculties to handle that situation with maturity or by communicating your needs or anything like that. So you develop a coping mechanism, whether that's withdrawing, rebelling, all these different kinds of patterns which can come up, and that gets embedded in our subconscious. Um, and as we grow up, that's why we'll find that we have these patterns which kind of come in a moment when we're triggered and we're like, why am I reacting in this way? We kind of feel like we blacked out for a moment. We're like, wow, I don't want to do that anymore. Why do I keep doing it? And I was explaining yesterday that it's because it's embedded in your subconscious that this is the way you keep yourself safe in this certain situation. Our brain does that because it's that fight or flight moment, back in the day when we needed, if there's a lion in front of us, our brain has wired certain experiences into our brain to be like, okay, I need to react this way because I need to react fast. And so in these moments of triggering, our body doesn't know exactly what's happening. All it knows is, okay, this is a threatening situation. I'm triggered. Okay, this is how I deal with that. And so for me, reparenting is also working with those patterns and um, with your adult self, taking your inner child by the hand and saying, I don't need this mechanism anymore. I'm going to find a better way of responding instead of reacting in this situation, and developing tools and mechanisms to kind of scaffold yourself so then when that same situation happens, you're able to go, okay, I'm feeling this like rising of this old pattern wanting to emerge, and then going to that place. I like have a very clear mental image in my head, which is why I love what you said, of myself going to hug my inner child, and she's about 4 years old. That's when a lot of the trauma happened in my life. Um, and I go and hold her in that moment, and I visualize myself going to my younger child and saying, it's okay, you don't have to handle this, because I'm going to handle it. And I've lived a life already and that you haven't lived yet, and I've got you. I love that picture of being able to go back to talk to your younger self and say, hey, what you're going through, it's pretty tough, and well done for developing a coping mechanism. I'm going to find one for you that's more effective for me now, that serves me in this moment.
Yeah, no one's perfect, hey? We all have our moments of being triggered. Like, we can also speak about these things, and then suddenly we're thrown into a situation that maybe is so new or one that we haven't been in for such a long time. And, like you spoke at the beginning about breakups, and it's like suddenly it's like that little child just wants to scream, or that wants to react or wants to send the 5,000 messages or whatever it is, or hide, and disassociate and cut off and whatever those coping things are, to just be like, I'm going to make sure that I'm safe right now. I'm going to make sure that I'm heard right now, or I'm going to inflame right now. And, sometimes that's also a process that needs to run its course. And if there ever is a time that we can come back into awareness, I would say then that is when you jump into your self-love practice, or that is when you have some kind of anchor to bring you back into the room. Like, even something like writing, to just write it out to the point you've written it all out, and then you can extract the pieces of gold and then come forward to communicate those pieces of gold, or to do those 50 push-ups, or to do that Kundalini fire breathing breath work, or to go for that surf, or to go scream in the forest, or whatever it is. And it's I don't know, I think I want to ask that question to you, Paige, like in that crucial moment of, do I act out right now because everything in me, all my impulsions in me are just really wanting to act out right now? Or like, do I go do my self-love practice or whatever it is, and make that, bring in the mature voice, bring in the parent voice of whatever that is, when our inner child does have the reins and is raging. Like, I want to ask you, like, what would you do in that moment, or how do you catch yourself in that moment? Or would you just let your inner child kind of do its thing and then bring in the parent voice afterwards? Like, how would you deal with that situation?
I like, first of all, just to respond to what you just said, I like that you were painting this picture of self-love being many different things for different people, and that you can't prescribe like a self-love checklist. There's like basics, things that generally work, through science that increase your dopamine and serotonin. But what makes you happy is different to me, or it's not even just about feeling happy, but feeling safe and feeling like grounded in yourself. So to answer your question, I don't think that you can always catch yourself in the moment. I think that that's like a lifelong practice, and maybe I'll only be able to do that when I'm like 80. Because sometimes like these subconscious patterns are so powerful, and they've been reaffirmed so many times in your life because you haven't yet worked on that pattern, or realized that that's something that happens. And every time in your life you have an experience, you're witnessing a life through that lens of, oh, people are this way or that way, and this is how I respond to that. And every time something like that happens, you're almost reaffirming in your head, like, oh, you're reaffirming that bias to yourself, or reaffirming that pattern to yourself. And so it can become so deeply ingrained that it's like, it's really hard, I think, sometimes to pull yourself out of the child. And I think what's important is then to have that base of self-love, to be able to go, okay, I responded that way. I know why I responded that way, because my child has triggered this, and this. And to be able to hold yourself and have self-compassion, to be like, okay, I responded in this way, and that's all right. How do I want to respond? Do I need to clear with that person, or whoever that moment was shared with? When I reacted in my child, do I need to clear with them? Is it a space where I can be vulnerable and share why I reacted in that way? Um, but I think as well, in the moment, um, it's really self-awareness, like being able to, I think what's important is emotional literacy, which is, being able to identify what emotion you're feeling, where in your body you're feeling it, and it's listening skills as well, because part of it is if you're reacting to a situation or uh, someone talking to you, it's about being able to like hold yourself and hold your reaction and notice, but with that and still being present in that situation. So you may feel like, okay, I want to scream and shout and rage right now. That's interesting. Okay, that's not how, and to have that like that inner parent or that inner observer mind that goes, okay, I'm not going to react like that right now, although that's what I want to do. And then being able to go afterwards and go, okay, I still need to feel that emotion though. So I'm still going to scream into the pillow, or I'm going to go into the forest and just run, whatever it is. I don't think it's always easy to do it in the moment, but I think that requires uh, deep emotional literacy and practicing of emotional literacy. Yeah.
And that,
Oh no. So just to elaborate a little bit on the emotions. So from, oh, there we go. Okay, we're back. What were you going to add?
I was gonna say, just looking for the lights. I was going to say thank you so, so much for what you said. It was really, really amazing. And I was going to speak to the inner voice. And I
Mm,
was going to say that's why it's so important to listen to the inner voice,
mm,
because we did this wonderful skit the other day in our gender equity and reconciliation training, and it was the skit where there were these two people, and they were, there was an interaction of coercion between a couple, and we had to come in with an intervention and then to show what the scene looked like afterwards once that intervention had happened. And in our skit, myself and another person were the higher selves, and it was all very whimsical, and we landed in with our drums and our insights, and we sat these people down and we spoke to them, and it landed, and then there was the intervention, and then everything could follow suit. And I just thought, man, I wish that is how it really was. I wish my higher self would just land down like a bodyguard and be like, well, Claire, here is how it is, and this is what you need to do. And then that would just affirm me so much. But then that is what I would do, like a big brother would, or like your parent would, or like your best friend would.
mm.
That family member who sees you and is that voice, and then you feel backed up. You're like, yeah, 100%, I'm right, and I can do this, and I get like this gets to happen. I get to live it out this way. Because so often,
Mm.
even for myself, I don't necessarily listen to my inner voice. It's there, but I might not actually listen to it in that moment, because maybe I'm talking about in triggered situations. And yeah, and in triggered situations, I might hear the voice, I might see it, but I think the volume of that voice is like 15% in comparison to the rest of what's going on. And yeah, so that's what I have to say to that. And also
Mm.
speaking to boundaries. I love speaking about boundaries. Boundaries are so powerful. I really feel like if there's any real world alchemy or practical magic that we can get out there, it's creating boundaries. And
Mm.
and that's not to be regiment with those boundaries, but to at least cultivate the landscape of what we would like to happen around us that is mimicking the landscape of within us. and
Mm,
creating those spaces of alignment.
mm. I
Yeah.
love that. I love that kind of uh invitation for boundaries. I think a lot of people have very uh reactive responses when you talk about use the word boundaries. It sounds negative, or maybe like things have to be a certain way. But for me, it's without boundaries, things cannot flow. I remember having this visual of like an Olympic swimmer, or the Olympics happening in a pool without any lanes in the pool, which is more efficient, which would be more efficient for the swimmer if they have a lane or if they don't have a lane, you know, and how, having that structure, whether that's, um, yeah, whatever your boundary looks like, it can look very different for different people. It just helps us to know where our sore points are, and like where, and that's a really powerful way to notice where you need a boundary is anger or upset. Anger is a very powerful emotion to notice, which is why I was saying like emotional literacy is really powerful for your self-love practice, to know that different emotions um, are triggers to notice different things. Like anger is a powerful reflection of a boundary that has been crossed, that maybe you need to reaffirm, or maybe you haven't yet communicated. I remember a like huge moment for me was reading, I can't remember where I read it, but it was talking about resentment and how resentment is purely on you, because resentment is about someone doing something and you haven't communicated a boundary. You haven't said that this is something I don't like. And so it's not anger, because it's not that they have outrightly, you've stated this boundary and they're pushing it. Resentment is like that seething, like, oh, they don't get me, they don't see me. And it's like, okay, have you told them how to get you, how to see you? Have you shared? And that's also a boundary about, this is how I want to be loved. That's a boundary as well. This for me is what makes me feel safe. That's a boundary. So yeah, I just wanted to paint that picture of what it means to have boundaries, and not necessarily be boundaried.
Yeah, and just to add to what you were saying, how important emotional boundaries are. So when we talk
Mm,
about safety and boundaries, we're not only talking about physical safety and boundaries, also talking about emotional safety and emotional boundaries.
mm,
So even in the act of distancing or workaholism or whatever it is, it's like those are also boundaries that have been crossed and attempts to protect ourselves and cocoon ourselves into safety and to shelter ourselves when
mm,
in fact when in fact we just haven't created that spaciousness with our boundaries around us and communicated, this is how I feel, this is what I need.
mm,
Are you able to meet me in that? And I
mm,
think we need to learn how to have more conversations like these between people, because I think we're in a culture currently of non-communication, which can induce heavy emotional labor, which can induce trauma and these childhood wounds to play out. And then
mm.
the next thing, it's just a beautiful shit show under the full moon.
Yeah.
When we all mean well and we all actually just want to have a good time at the end of the day.
Mm. Yeah.
And I'm bringing awareness to the full moon that's arriving tomorrow, because I think that's where a lot of my sassiness is coming from in this particular podcast.
Mm. I want to touch on what you just said, because it makes me think of we were going to touch on the balance of the feminine and masculine energies, and how that plays into self-love. And I think you've just stated it so perfectly, that you know having this flow with emotions, being intuitive, being connected to your inner voice is that feminine aspect. And again, we've said this before, but feminine and masculine energies being something that each of us has, not as in, it's not about gender at all. It's about these energies that exist within us, yin and yang. So that intuition, that listening to your inner voice, that's the feminine aspect of self-love. And then the masculine aspect being taking action, setting boundaries. Um, I think a lot of people have a perception of self-love of being, I'm going to take a bubble bath, I'm going to eat a nice piece of cake, I'm going to eat out, I'm not going to cook for myself, whatever. That's great. That's great self-love. Yes. Self-love is also holding yourself accountable to the things that you said you would do, to the things that you want to do, to your dreams, to your goals, to your self-love practice. Self-love is maybe, you know, waking up. You said you were going to wake up early, and it's that part of you that's like, yo, you said you were going to wake up early, girl. Like, what are you doing still in bed? That's also self-love. So yeah, I'm wondering if you can like add to that feminine masculine discussion.
Totally. I think the balance is key. I think the
Mm,
balance is absolutely key. For instance, you were saying now, with the wake up and do your self-love practice. I mean, something that I've been trying to bring back into my practice is a Shaolin Gong Fu physical, which does require jackknives and push-ups and all kinds of terrifyingly awesome things. My body is like, no. But I'm like, you know how good you'll feel after this, and yeah, I mean, there is that yin yang space of the yin space of I just want to lie here in this cushiness, and it's so good. And if I start, when my body's ready to start, it's going to make such a difference to my day. But there's also a aspect of check out there. I've
mm,
checked out. I've checked out also from knowing um, that if I fully go all in and lubricate my whole system so that I take myself to the hardest place mentally, emotionally, and physically at the beginning of my day, then anything else that comes at me in the rest of my day, I can actually engage with pure precision and clarity and presence. And I can be fully there in my body because I've already met myself through the hardest things. And then also with that practice, I'll also go into breath work, Kundalini fire breathing. I'll also go into deep meditation and stillness, broaden my situational awareness. I'll also bring in mantra, music, medicine to open myself up, which also does incredible things for the nervous system. And I'll receive wisdom and give time to receive downloads and insights. And
mm,
that's an hour long practice. It doesn't have to
mm,
be long. It can go for 3 hours, but keeping it tidy, it can even be half an hour, but it's nice to have that hour practice. And I personally find it's a really good combination between the masculine and the feminine.
mm,
And it empowers me as an androgynous being because
mm,
I think ultimately we are androgynous beings because we do have masculine tendencies and we do have feminine tendencies. And going back to the reparenting is really providing for yourself what it is that you need. And in any given situation, if I can provide for myself mentally, emotionally, physically what I need, then I free myself and I free the other. And then I no longer have a dependency on another. And
mm,
usually it's the dependency that is what pushes people away.
mm, mm. Something which is coming up for me in what you shared, which is something which was such a huge aha for me, just to paint a picture of kind of deep self-love, which is what I was talking about earlier, of like how I realized in my eating disorder journey, like healing that healing journey, the difference between what I thought self-love was and what self-love, deep self-love really is. And I think exercise, when you're talking about, yeah, getting some physical movement in your body, I've noticed such a significant difference in how I think about exercise. So before, it was self-love. I'm going to the gym for self-love and I'm pushing myself really hard for self-love. But actually, behind that, it was because I didn't love my body and I wanted to change it. And I was trying to restrict myself from looking a certain way. And I was worried about what people thought about my body. And I was scared about engaging in spaces where my body was exposed. And actually, it wasn't self-love. I had a very mental model of, oh, yeah, going to the gym is good for me. but my motive behind it wasn't actually, that wasn't the real motive. And now how I engage with exercise is I'm moving for enjoyment. I'm choosing joyful movement because I know how it feels when my body has moved. And I love that feeling. And I love myself after I've moved. And so the way I move my body is completely changed. I used to be, really big into gym and cycling and weight training. Nothing against those things, but I actually didn't enjoy it. Versus now, uh, doing more qigong and boxing, and I've discovered, what type of movement works really well for me, what makes me feel joyful, what leaves me feeling like really elated and alive, versus the gym. I would leave feeling elated, but I was also very aware that, okay, this was an hour of my life. Where am I going to fit it in so that it, doesn't disrupt, versus like, I can't wait to go do some yoga, Um, yeah, to just make that distinction, like, what is your motivation behind doing things? And does it come from a place of real self-compassion? Yeah.
Yeah, and we've been speaking to very active things. So I also just want to bring in, for people out there also who have extremely active lives, a lot of fire in their day, then I would also say to then spend 20 minutes in a point of stillness, or to just
Mm,
go and nature bathing, go lie under a tree, just go lie on the ground under a tree for 20 minutes, or whatever, or have that bath, have that beautiful bath with the candles and the music and the essential oils, and whatever it is that is absent. And that's why the masculine feminine balance is so important. So it's
mm,
almost like bringing the qigong and the tai chi into your day. It's like, okay, so today I've been experiencing a lot of fire energy. What do I need now to balance that out? And to start to
mm,
be an artist and start to be creative with those energies and how they come into your day and how they influence you.
mm. Yes, I love that. I love that. Like finding that balance between the masculine and feminine is such a part of self-love. And we spoke about this, what happens when you have like really high yang masculine energy in your life, and then that's really your focus, how you can move very easily into burnout and become quite rigid or very structured, and very often people like that feel like they're missing their creativity, or they're missing flow in their lives, or those kinds of things. And then versus the having too much yin energy, where maybe you're very intuitive and flowing and fluid, but you don't have structure in your life and not able to make things happen for yourself. So yeah, I think it's really powerful to be able to recognize and identify, okay, which energy am I working with more lately, and how might I bring balance to that as part of my self-care practice. It's really, yeah, really powerful thought.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I think it's really important to have some kind of consistency or some kind of ritual to it, that then that frequency has a place in your day and can influence your neural pathways and can influence your, creating a new habit and your patterns and things like that. So, even if it's agreement with yourself to, when you have a cup of tea, to sit in contemplative silence and just have that breath, or to wear a bracelet where every time you touch the bracelet, you have something to be grateful for, to just really start to address those neural pathways so that the old ones can begin to erode, those stressful ones can begin
Mm,
to erode, so that when the stresses happen and kick in, there's less of it to work on in your
mm,
brain as a system. And even thinking of something, I was speaking of rock climbing to someone the other day. We were speaking of meditation, and I was trying to describe meditation to him. And I was like, that moment when you're rock climbing and suddenly everything goes still and everything goes silent, and you're in a space of acute awareness that you know exactly what's going on. And there's an intuitive instinct that moves through your body that you're able to move, but you're also able to analyze and calculate, and all of your senses are activated in that moment. And yeah, just to get to that still point of precision. And he could relate to that because he was a rock climber. And there are people who get no peace in their life whatsoever. There's no peace, but they'll go slackline on a slack line that's like 1,000 meters above the ground
Yes.
because that's the one point where they can find that sense of peace and that acute control and connection with themselves, that still point of meditation.
Mm.
And yeah, so with that, what I'm basically saying is through these different activities through the body or through some kind of ritualistic practice, what we're able to do is build that muscle and build that response in ourselves, that when we come into situations, that faculty is already there to draw on. And we begin to
Mm.
see things differently. We begin to be responsive differently. We're able to connect with that space of calm in ourselves, or connect with that space of self-love in ourselves. We're able to self-soothe differently because it's simply become a familiar practice that we've strengthened and built on, and now has a presence in our lives. It's like, with doing push-ups lately, but with push-ups, the first time you try, you can't do it. It's not there. It's not. And then and then you go again and again and again, or riding a bike, or surfing, or whatever it is, you go again and again, and then eventually you're doing it and you're in it, and it's first nature. It's
Yeah.
like you've been doing it your whole life because that ability is there. And for
Mm.
self-love too, um, even to speak to a question I was given today was, what books are out there and how to know how to love yourself. It's like, so Pedro, I want to ask you, like, what books, and also how do you identify the space in yourself where you know how to love yourself? Like, what is that space for you?
Mm. I think there's so many books, and I think what's interesting is that you can find this journey through so many different modalities. Um,
Mm,
but something which I was just thinking of, which feeds into this question, was when I was doing my initial coaching training, I was training to become a recovery coach. So that's for those who don't know, it's a coach for those who are trying to recover from addiction. And one of the things that we work with clients is what we call recovery capital. But for me, it's like self-care pillars. So it's like unpacking your life into the different areas. So uh, your work, your relationships, and then also, okay, just simply, we can do it more simply: physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. So listing them out like that, and then under each one, asking yourself, what makes me feel really happy in this area of my life? What would feel like something which feeds me and makes me feel safe and loved and at ease, and to list them out. So, for example, we've named a lot of physical ones. Maybe your self-love practice is a bath. Maybe your self-love practice is going for a massage, if that's accessible for you. Maybe that self-love practice is going for a run. Those are physical things. And then listing out your intellectual ones. Okay, what makes me feel like excited about life intellectually? Is it reading books? Is it listening to podcasts? Is it watching interesting movies? Is it, if you're a musician, is it going to live gigs? Um, Emotionally, what makes me feel safe and loved? Emotionally, is it speaking to your best friend? Is it speaking to your therapist? Is it journaling? Is it meditating? Is it physical release? Is it dance? And then spiritually, what is self-love to you? Do you go to church? Do you have a different practice that connects you to the spiritual? Or do you go and nature bathe? Um, Anything like that. And I think that's like a really, really powerful tool, to be able to see a list in front of you, go, okay, wow, there are all these tools available to me. And then, you have that mental picture of that list. And in a moment when you're feeling really down and out, you're able to go, okay, what is my recovery capital? What do I need to fill myself up, to fill my cup again? What is my self-care pillar? and you can go, okay, I know physically I can do this, I know intellectually I could do this, or all these different things. So I think that's a really powerful way to go about it. And then just in terms of some literature, I highly recommend You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay. It's a very simple, easy read. She articulates things so simply and beautifully. Um, I finished the book in a weekend, and it's life changing, and it expresses very simple but powerful self-love practices. And she talks about these things that we're talking about: reparenting, boundaries, um, all these kinds of things. And then I think a lot of stuff from Brene Brown as well, I highly recommend. Um, a lot of Dr. Wayne Dyer's, I have found to be, specifically Your Sacred Self, I found to be life-changing and transformational. I'm trying to think who else. Um, yeah, I'll just give those three recommendations for now. But there's so much literature out there. Even watching Deepak Chopra videos, or um, yeah, there's lots of beautiful things out there.
And what you were saying, it really inspired me coming into the sensual self and our
Mm,
own sensuality and experiencing love there. Because I think that's missing from the bedroom in a lot of places, is that ability to really connect with ourselves and to really love ourselves and to really know how it is that we want to be touched, where we like to be touched, you know, and to really go into that in a way of being the guide, letting our bodies guide us, and then being the guide for others, or when meeting another, allowing us to be the guides for each other and allowing that space to open up. So it can be a
mm,
really deep, tender, and intimate exploration, like intimacy, intimacy. And it's almost like if we're not able to go into that place with ourselves, then we're not able to open up that space and give that space to share with another. So
mm,
even in the sense of, wanting to be held, if holding yourself, if self-affectionate touch is a strong practice, I can guarantee you that moment that even when you're lying next to another person and you're thinking, oh, I just want to be held, you can hold yourself, and all of that energy that you are really craving and longing to be plugged into you can be plugged into you, because you are the source of that experience. Even if someone else is touching you, you are still the source of that experience. So to bring that in as a self-love practice, like really holding yourself,
mm,
and when it comes to making love with yourself, like really exploring those spaces, and then being
mm,
able to be brave enough, to courageous enough to show another, and for another to be brave enough and courageous enough to receive that information,
mm,
to co-navigate and explore those spaces, because we can't rely on another to find those spaces for us and to open
mm,
up those spaces for us. And we also can't be armored in
mm,
lovemaking, and
mm,
often those come into play. So I'm just finding the notion is just the insight more and more lately. I have a question of how many people are really making love in the bedroom?
mm,
Like, where's the education around that, about it being a full physical, mental, emotional, spiritual body experience as the baseline for love making? Like, how are we still in this patriarchal space of rape and pillage and pomp
mm.
and bang and whatever else it is? Like, let's all go to the meat factory. But excuse my cynicism, but it's really like I'm seeing it. And
Yeah.
I'm really wondering, it makes me question like how many people out there are actually making love. And I think the starting point of that is, can you make love with yourself? Can you connect with yourself? Do you
Mm,
give yourself that time and that loving touch and that
mm,
intimacy and that affection? That is something that you are already transmitting. once you come into communion with another.
Hmm.
And then
Yeah.
that doesn't mean we're gonna have sacred sex doesn't mean we're gonna pray. You know, you can you can pray in all kinds of ways. You know, kink is sacred too. Like
Hmm.
really, I'm just putting it all out there.
Yeah, I love that. Something which really changed my view of sex was inquiring into the female orgasm, and I read something. Oh, I can't remember who it was from, but it was a woman who was saying this is a controversial opinion, but I think your orgasm is your responsibility, not just your partner's. And I was like, whoa, how could it be my responsibility? And she was talking about um, your ability to surrender to the moment and to allow yourself to feel pleasure. And I think that a self-love practice is so important for this aspect of your life in sex and in sensualities. Do you allow yourself to feel pleasure? Do you surrender to pleasure? Do you allow yourself to like fully feel that blissful, ecstatic, orgasmic joy, you know, that turns you on? Do you allow yourself to live a life that turns you on? And to touch on that idea of sexuality and sensuality being a creative energy, it's that part of ourselves which births things into the world. That men also have that place in their bodies that it's called a hara for men. That it's not the womb, but it's in the same energetic in the same place. And yeah, that's also the place that it's crazy that we're made to feel pleasure. I mean, why would we have a clitoris if we weren't made to feel pleasure in our lives? And I think to begin with, for example, these pillars of self-love and really engaging in just the senses, like when you're eating something, how engaged are you with experiencing that? That if you think about when you eat something and it's really delicious, like you make the same sounds that you make in sex, because it's like that same, like, wow, you're experiencing, you're in it, you're lost, you're present, you're feeling that moment of pleasure and allowing that to pour into you. And engaging with all the senses, like really noticing things, looking, hearing, touching. All of this is so crucial to being able to surrender in that moment and truly make love. Um, it is largely on your ability to surrender and feel pleasure. And I think that was also a really powerful question for me, an aha moment in my life where it was like, do you fully allow yourself to embrace pleasure? Because I think for women in particular, there's a lot of um, in porn, like pleasure looks a very specific way for women, or pleasure is shamed, and even for men. So yeah, I think to break those molds is really important, and I'm glad you brought that up as well. So I know that we are like past our hour mark, and I think we could speak about this for hours, but we have a very exciting announcement for those who are really keen to dig into the self-love topic even more and dig into these themes that we've been talking about. Claire, drum roll. So, okay. We are releasing, we're so excited. We've been working very hard to create something for you guys, which, yeah, can just help you unleash your inner shine, remove those blocks from your life, help you draw firmer boundaries, help you establish that yeah, queen. We want to start a self-love revolution. So, Claire, take it away. Tell them what it's about.
So we're going to do a 5-day mini course where we touch on reparenting, boundaries, your inner voice, your sensual self, weaving together the sacred masculine and feminine. And we're going to spend each day.
Oh, the joys of internet connection. So let me tell you a little bit about what you guys are going to. Oh, there you go. You cut out for a second. Welcome back, babe.
Where did I drop off?
Um, we're talking about reparenting, boundaries,
Sure,
and the
and
other
the
two.
sensual self, and the divine masculine and feminine, so that we can go into a self-love revolution through evolving our practice and spending each day creating and cultivating a badass practice so that you have something to walk away with. So each day we're going to focus in on one of these things, one of these topics, and we're going to be giving meditations and embodiments and talks and all kinds of amazing things to get you into a deep dive immersive so that at the end of these 5 days, you will be full throttle in your self love revolution.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So every day you're going to receive a video, as Claire said, an embodiment or meditation. You're going to receive different resources from a lot of. We had a question in the chat asking, please share a list of resources. We're going to be sharing tons of resources of people that we admire who work in this field as well. Um, yeah, so much juicy content, and it's all for free, and journal prompts as well. And we've worked it out that it's about 30 to 40 minutes a day. So you can choose how you want to split that up. If you want to do 10 minutes before your work day, or do it all at the end, or some in your lunch break, it's up to you. It's entirely self-directed. We're going to share something new every day. And at the end of the 5 days, we're going to have a live Q&A where you can hop on and ask your questions to us. And we're going to, yeah, get even deeper into these topics. So we're all going to join on a Facebook group where we invite you to also share your experience with the women who are going through this with you. And those who show the most participation and engagement are also going to be up for some epic, amazing prizes. Oh, I'm so excited. So, yeah.
Reiterate what she said, there will be amazing prizes. We're giving some special offerings at the end. So if you participate and you show up and you do all the challenges and all the things, we're going to have some amazing surprise offerings at the end for you.
Yeah, so we've got the links in our bios. So if you want to go and sign up, it's free. As I said, it's 5 days. We're going to start on the 2nd of August, and I'll be from Monday to Friday. Every day we're going to share new content, and yeah, it's going to be very exciting. So please come join us and sign up. Cool. Thank you so much, Love, for hopping on and sharing your wisdom as always. I'm always moved by you and by these moments of sharing.
Always so moved. And thank you everyone for listening and jumping on with us. We really, really appreciate you here.
Yes.
It's
Mwah.
always such a joy. Mwah. Love you,
Wishing you all,
Queen.
love you. Wishing you all a weekend of self-love. Yeah.